These are a few photos I have taken with my homemade cinestill. Let me tell you more about it. Cinestill Film is a company that sells motion picture film, Kodak Vision 3, cut into normal 36 exposure rolls and modified to be developed in C41 process available at any photo lab. Now normally motion picture film is developed in ECN2 process and cannot be developed in C41 because the film has a ramjet layer. This layer protects the film against light leakage and halation effect that occurs when light passes through the film and bounces back onto the emulsion. If you try to develop the film in C41, you would get pieces of coal black ramjet layer floating in your chemicals and render them useless for future processing. If you give such a film to a lab, it will ruin all the film they will be processing together with your roll, and they would have to replace all the chemicals and clean the machine throughout giving it out to service. Now what Cinestill does, and we don't exactly know how, they remove the ramjet layer and they repackage the film into normal 36 exposure rolls. This way it is safe to process in C41, but since the protective layer is gone, you see a strong halation effect in your pictures just like here. Moreover, you get rather funky colors because the film was intended to be processed in ECN2. Currently, Cinestill sells three types of film: 50D, based on Kodak's 50D film, Cinestill 400D, based most likely on Kodak's 250D, and Cinestill 800T, based on Kodak's 500T film. But there are a couple disadvantages with their film. It's expensive and it is often out of stock. Alright, so now we know that to create the film we need an original motion picture film and we must remove the ramjet layer prior to exposing the film. You might have seen a few YouTube videos where photographers say that they shot this cheap cinestill and usually it's about the original Kodak Vision stock. They would then either develop the film normally in ECN2 or they would remove the ramjet layer in one way or another before developing the film in C41. Now it is time to begin my story. I have never had enough disposable income to shoot a lot of film or buy cameras at their retail prices or even normal used prices, so I would just often look for interesting offers from sellers on the local websites. I would often resell and sometimes fix the stuff that I was buying. And one day I stumbled upon an ad with Kodak Vision spools in it and it was only priced at $10. After talking to the seller, it occurred that he was going to sell all 10 spools for $10 each. These are 122 or 400 feet motion picture film spools. He found 10 of those in his attic and he was going to sell the total for $100. You can compare that to the retail price of the fresh Kodak Vision 3 stock, which sells roughly for $250. Well, the prices may vary because apparently productions can order them cheaper in bulk, but for an average buyer I think that you are most likely to stumble upon the price of $250 on eBay, for example. So compared to that, $10 for a spool is extremely cheap. My guess is that the man googled the name Kodak Vision and found an ad for respooled version of 36 exposure cut film for roughly $7 to $10 that were then sold on the local market, and he thought that it was the price for the whole spool because usually the sellers would use the picture or of a whole spool. And so I ended up ordering all 10 spools from the seller, except there was one problem and he could only send it 5 days after we had agreed on the deal. So I was worrying like crazy that someone would text him or call him and go there directly and maybe buy the film at a slightly higher price. Which didn't happen, and I got all 10 spools in an original Kodak package. The film was stored in a dry place, but apparently the temperatures have been quite high based on the film's sensitivity and color rendition. I have cut a few rolls of film for testing to see if the film was still usable, and it was, so I ended up selling 9 other spools at roughly $170 each in the following 6 months. I discovered that this film worked best when treated as ISO 100 or 125 film instead of the Libit 500, so I shot a few rolls with it, and you can see them while I talk about this. I also asked my friend to pose for me so we could test the film. I bought a 50mm f1.4 lens specifically to be able to shoot this film in the low light, in the tungsten conditions it was made for. I found a semi-broken lens with somewhat broken focusing, but with perfect condition glass. That's the way I could afford a faster lens, and I would give the lens to repair a few months later. And now to the main part, how I made this Vision film into cinestill. And the answer is quite obvious. I removed the ramjet layer before shooting the film. But how can you do that? In the ECN2 process, there is a first step when you remove the ramjet layer chemically. So theoretically we could do that, this one step, dry the film, and then re-spool it. But it isn't exactly an easy thing to do, especially to find a pitch dark place where you can dry the film for hours or even longer. Also, we can't know if the bath can affect the image quality, so I didn't do that. Some photographers on YouTube have shared their process of developing the film in the C41 process, and they came up with a couple solutions. What you can do is you can remove the ramjet layer physically with warm water and baking soda. So these YouTubers would make a bath with this baking soda solution, and in total darkness they would go through the backside of the film, removing all of the ramjet. This is very similar to what I did, except since I was worried that water might affect the image quality, I hung up the film in my bathroom and I used a cloth soaked in baking soda solution, and I tried to remove all the ramjet layer of this one film roll. I would then dry the film with dry cloth and I would re-spool it back into the canister. Since I couldn't exactly control if I removed all the ramjet layer, I couldn't just give this film to develop in a normal lab. And luckily there is one place in Warsaw where I lived at the time that could do it for me. They offered to develop ECN2 film, except what they did was just a usual simple manual process that the other YouTubers did, where they just physically removed the ramjet layer and developed it normally in C41. Maybe there wasn't exactly any ramjet left, but it's better to be safe and give it to someone who is aware that the ramjet layer should be there. And I got the results from this first film that I shot, and you can see the results on the screen. There are visible drops in most of the pictures, and in general the halation effect wasn't even in the image either. I suspect that the drops are caused by the ramjet water that came to the emulsion side through the sprockets while I was cleaning the film with the cloth. Next time I came up with an improved process. I would tape the film from the emulsion side with a kind of delicate tape used for painting or whatever, and I would hang it with the tape on the emulsion side on. I would then again clean the film. This time I did it for a longer time just to be sure that all the ramjet was removed, and I re-spooled the film again. And these are the photos that I got from these rolls. I consider this a huge success. I have noticed no weird issues with this film others than I would have expected from a cinestill film or an expired film. The halations are present and look pretty much the same as the ones that you would get from cinestill film, perhaps a little stronger because I would expose the film as an ISO 100 film. The color rendition cannot exactly be compared between cinestill and my version of it, because the film is quite a bit expired, but I managed to edit the photos similarly to how I would with the normal cinestill film. You can also notice that the grain is more aggressive, but that is to be expected from an older emulsion, especially when it is expired. So what is the takeaway from my experience? It was quite tedious, done in a small bathroom, so I didn't even recreate it. But the fact that you can do something like this is inspiring. It means that we can not only recreate the cinestill film effect, but we can also do some unique experiments with other emulsions as well, with more proper equipment, that is. Maybe someone could also try simply doing the first step of ECN2 process, removing the ramjet layer, hanging the film to dry, and respooling it for shooting. I would do it for sure if I had the means to. And that will do for today's video. I have a lot more stuff to tell about, but I can't do it without your support. Most of the stuff that I want to do requires quite a bit of investment, so I would appreciate at least having an audience to show my videos to. I have a 16mm camera that I would like to test out. I have quite a few film cameras and some older expired film. I would also love to shoot some photography travel videos. So subscribe and let me know what kind of videos you would be interested in watching about next. Bye!